Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 12th of March 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. There was no show yesterday because there was no gaming news and comment. I'm thinking we need something to fill that. I think we could call it Hotfix. I'm thinking it could be X-rated. We'll think about that later on. Coming up in the show, ladies and gentlemen, the Xi3 Piston Steam Box available for pre-order. We shall discuss the specs and why it's dreadful. Tomb Raider PC patch addresses Nvidia and Intel hardware issues, and God of War Ascension trophy removed as a result of a controversy stemming from a journalistic flub. The first in a wave of so-called Steam boxes is now available to pre-order. The Xi3 Piston, which looks like a small box and is produced by Xi3 Corporation, will clock in at $1,000 for a pre-order. I've been digging around to try and find the specs for this particular thing, and they are curiously difficult to find. Thankfully, the internet will provide, and from what I can tell, this appears to be a 2.3 GHz APU with 3.2 GHz turbo capability, quad-core specifically, and R464, 8 GB of RAM, and what would appear to be an HD 7660G, which is part of the APU. If you want to know what an APU is, maybe you've not heard that terminology before, it's an accelerated processing unit. It's essentially an all-in-one CPU and GPU, so obviously you're going to save quite a bit of space there. It doesn't have a discrete graphics card. You can also add a 256GB SSD for $340, as well as a 512GB SSD for $750, and there's currently a $100 discount through the course of the South by Southwest Festival, which will be ending on March the 17th. Well, so much for our hopes that this would be financed and somehow subsidized by Valve, or that there would be some crazy new hardware technology which would allow the actual box to be significantly cheaper, because this thing is a complete dud in terms of hardware. It is dreadful. There is no reason to purchase this. I really cannot figure out why anyone would. Now, the size factor is something that people have been touting. It's like, look at the size of it. It's tiny, tiny little box. Yes, you're right, it's a pretty small box, but how small does the box actually need to be? Because you can build a pretty powerful PC within a smaller form factor like, say, Micro ATX, and it won't take up too much more space. It really depends, I suppose, as to how much more space you really need, as well as how much portability you require. If you require portability, you'd want to be considering a laptop. This thing is still going to weigh a reasonable amount, even though it's not that big. The main problem this machine has is that it's woefully underpowered for its cost, and as far as I can see, there doesn't appear to be a single reason to pick one of these things up versus getting a Micro ATX machine. If size really is a concern, then you can build smaller form factors, or of course you could just buy an HTPC of some description. Let's see what else we could get for that, yeah? Want to buy bespoke? Fine, let's buy bespoke. Let's buy something like the Alienware X51, which is a smaller form factor. It's basically the size of an Xbox, yeah? Size of an Xbox 360, not the huge old Xbox. And this thing will also set you back $999. And the model that I'm looking at, which is the 6154BK, has an i5-3450, which is clocked at 3.1 GHz. It's got 8 gigs of RAM. It's got a 1TB hard drive, which is storage-wise, although not speed-wise, much better than the internal 128GB SSD that is provided. And it has a GeForce GT 640 graphics card in it, as well as a Blu-ray drive and everything else you could possibly desire. Bear in mind, of course, that there is no optical drive of any description on the Xi3 Piston. Should also point out that that computer comes with Windows 8, and by the sounds of it, this machine is either going to come without an operating system or it's going to come with Linux installed in some way. Probably going to be Linux by the sounds of it. Now, Alienware is about the most expensive you're going to get, especially considering that form factor. If form factor is not important to you, you can, from many different places, buy a machine that is significantly better than that for that price, or of course, you could build one. Now, let's talk about the actual hardware specs and what they're going to allow you to do. The answer is not a lot. Now, bear in mind this thing is shipping in 2013, and that's towards the end of the year. They're looking at around a Christmas release of this thing. So I dug up some benchmarks for the 7660G, which, as I said, is that integrated mobile graphics solution, and let's just say the benchmarks weren't pretty. According to notebookcheck.net, we are looking at a system that would run Tomb Raider on medium settings at 28.8 frames per second, going down to 8.5 frames per second in Ultra. Crysis 3 on low ran at 28 frames per second, medium was 15 frames per second. The speed was acceptable in Dead Space 3, where at medium it got about 41.6 frames per second. Assassin's Creed 3, even on its lowest settings, was 16 frames per second, dropping down to less than 10 on Ultra. Far Cry 3 on Ultra was 3.5 frames per second, playable on low only, medium is 20 frames per second. Black Ops 2 you can't even play on high at a reasonable frame rate. You can't get to 60 frames per second unless you crank it down to absolute minimum. Need for Speed Most Wanted, same problem, and it just goes on and on and on and on. These are on games that came out in 2012 or early 2013. This is a machine that's coming out after the PlayStation 4. This thing is goddamn useless as a gaming rig. Under no circumstances would I ever recommend somebody drop $1,000 on something like this. If you're looking to just play small casual games, you can do that on a netbook. If you're looking to play actual games, I would recommend you buy a console. Buy a PlayStation 4 instead of this thing. I am recommending you buy a console over a PC. This is how dumb this piece of hardware actually is. What use is the form factor when it won't run anything? Explain that to me. And don't get me started on the idea of, oh, the architecture is completely different. It's not. It's a PC. That's all it is. It is an actual PC. It's modular, as in you can swap some bits out. Yeah, but it still costs $1,000. Something that costs $1,000 should not run that badly. I mean, honestly, some of this performance isn't even up to the level of a PlayStation 3, let alone a PlayStation 4, and certainly nowhere near the kind of PC that you can get for $1,000. If this is the start of the Steambox project, then this is a pretty terrible start. I cannot see a market for this thing. I really can't. What is it for? Who is it for? And good lord, you're not going to convince anyone to switch over to PC with something like that. If someone dropped $1,000 and got that kind of performance and graphical fidelity, then they should be screaming for a refund. This is a terrible first foot forward for this particular project. I'm not really sure what's going on here. Why does this thing even exist? I really hope there's something that we're all just missing here, and there's some kind of crazy power thing under the hood that we don't know about, but so far I don't see how they could fit something like that in there. Tomb Raider for PC has been patched and supposedly addresses some of the NVIDIA or Intel hardware issues, although there is no confirmation as to whether or not this will give you significant performance improvements, since there has not been an update to the NVIDIA drivers since Tomb Raider was actually released. My source at NVIDIA says that there are some general performance and crash bug fixes, but TressFX is still all over the place. So while there have been some minor changes to TressFX, which it seems like they are mostly cosmetic changes to prevent the hair from going crazy, you cannot expect good performance on NVIDIA cards with TressFX as of yet. NVIDIA confirms that they are still working on more fixes to the game going forward. As for myself, I'm probably going to hold off finishing the game until this is properly sorted out, simply because the large frame drops in certain areas are particularly jarring, and I really don't like gaming under 60 frames per second. Sorry, I've got used to the idea. It's what I believe PC gaming is supposed to be, so when it's not doing that, I'm thinking, yeah, you know what, I got better things to do with my time. I'll wait for this to get fixed. Santa Monica studio of Sony Computer Entertainment has confirmed that it will be changing one of the trophies in God of War Ascension as a result to concerns raised in early reviews of the game. In a statement made to Joystick, a representative for the developer confirmed that the trophy, formerly known as Bros Before Hoes, spelt H-O-S, will be renamed Bros Before Foes. The text was offensive to some members of our community and impacted their enjoyment of the game, the representative said within the statement itself. Unfortunately, there's a slight problem with this controversy. It's all actually over very little at all, or more to the point, it was aimed at entirely the wrong thing. So, where did this come from? It came from an early review by Adam Sessler, an extremely well-respected reviewer, and rightfully so. This man has more experience in the industry than most people. considered widely to be one of the best personalities and most respected journalists that we have. Unfortunately, he seems to have dropped the ball, as we all do from time to time, and what he did was criticize the appearance of the Bros Before Hoes trophy while you were in the middle of a scene beating the face in of a Fury, who is of course a mythological Greek creature who so happens to be represented as female. Unfortunately, that's not what the trophy's actually for. And this so-called misogynistic gut punch, as was described by Adam Sessler, is kind of nothing of the sort. So further research indicates that the trophy itself was in fact given, minor spoilers here folks, so mute this for the next 15 or 20 seconds if you want to avoid that very minor spoiler. You get the trophy for having Orcus choose to help Kratos against his mother, who of course happens to be a Fury. So that's where the whole Bros Before Hoes idea comes from. Now don't get me wrong, it's a pretty dumb phrase. It's an incredibly dumb phrase. It's devoid of any intellectual or humorous facets. It's something that no one really says unless their collar is popped and they're chugging a natty ice at the time. Now, this whole controversy lands at a very unfortunate time. Or should I say, this whole controversy was created over nothing at a very unfortunate time. This is a time when the gaming scene in general is a little bit sensitive about issues of feminism, misogyny, and so on and so forth. I think you probably know why. Obviously, over the past few months, tensions have run high, and of course, with the release of the first episode of Tropes vs. Women, there's a lot of people wandering around looking for blood for whatever reason. The backlash against this particular review has been, let's just say, disgraceful in every possible respect. Let's just be totally honest here. Does Adam Sessler deserve criticism for reporting something which is not true? Yes, he does, as should anyone that reports something which is not true. That's fine. That's something that we as press, journos, commentators, pundits, YouTubers, whatever the hell you want to call us, this is something that we open ourselves up to because we are in a position of authority, we are in a position where we have a lot of influence, ergo that means we also have a lot of responsibility. We should probably not get things wrong because we cause massively bad things to happen. However, is the correct response to a journalist making a mistake to go into the comments section, completely ruin it in every possible respect, and I quote in one of the top upvoted comments in that particular video, call the reviewer in question a politically correct faggot? No, it isn't. That is ridiculous. Will you allow me to go M-rated with my language for a second? That sounds like a reasonably decent thing to do at this point. I think it's pretty appropriate. Those of you who don't like that, of course, the mute button is down the bottom. How the fuck do you as gamers expect to be respected when this is the kind of representation that's going on? Don't even give me the vocal minority argument. That is a huge cop-out. We're talking about comments that are upvoted, yeah, as in someone pressed that thumbs up button. In fact, multiple people did, more so than voted the comment down. So it's up the top, yeah? And this, as a result, is representing the popular vote. This is how these pseudo-democratic systems work. There's a reason why people criticize Reddit for so many different things, because you see racist, sexist, homophobic, stupid crap all over the place upvoted because it's hilarious. Jesus Christ. The whole Anita Sarkeesian, I don't know, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. It's long and it has too many syllables, and my pitiful male brain can't handle it. The whole controversy surrounding that is, I think, proof enough that we have a serious problem on our hands. We are not talking about the vocal minority as Cliffy B described them today. We are talking about the gaming Taliban. We are talking about a fairly significant portion of people that are willing to go on ridiculous attacks, and do so in a very public and well-supported manner. You can cry about vocal minority all you please, but like it or not, these people are representing you. This is how we, as personalities, perceive you on a daily basis, because these are the loudest people. And who's shouting them down exactly? We've got to be the guys that shout them down. You know what happens there? We get attacked for doing that, and the vicious cycle continues. We have a very serious attitude problem in our midst, and it's not going away anytime soon. And if you can't discuss these things like rational adults, then you should expect companies not to treat you like rational adults. What that means is you're going to get exploited, you're going to get pandered to, and you're going to get patronized. Now, there are two other issues at play here. The first, of course, is whether or not in a review you should be getting on a moral soapbox about certain issues. I think this is a very dangerous thing to do. The notion of morality in a virtual world is a matter for great discussion. We, as gaming commentators, or just gamers in general, all of us, have been debating the notion of whether or not violence affects real life, whether or not it makes you a more aggressive or violent person because you played video games. This is something we've had to fight against because it is a misconception, and to this day there is no evidence that video game violence causes real violence. The correlation simply is not there. When we talk about something like sexism, when we talk about something like misogyny, we're talking about the idea that a piece of media can be sexist and misogynist, and that will have a negative impact on the person watching it. Because I watch a lot of stuff that has plenty of misogyny, plenty of sexism in it, plenty of racism in it. Does that make me racist or misogynist? No, because it's within context. It's very important that we are allowed to produce media that tackles these issues in some way, even if it's not something which declares it wrong, simply because that's part of storytelling. Racism is a real thing. Misogyny is a real thing. We can't simply whitewash it and ignore it. If you're going to go into your 9-minute review and spend a significant chunk of time talking about a moral issue, then you best be damn sure that you know what exactly it is that you're talking about. I, as a video game commentator, do not feel qualified to talk about many moral issues. When I do it with great reluctance. When I do my videos like tragedy and video game violence, I didn't even want to make that. I hated the notion of making it. When I did my Sopa video, I hated the notion of making it. But there are times when this kind of thing has to be done. But those times are few and far between. And there's a reason that you don't keep crying wolf over important subjects, because people cease to take you seriously and the whole thing becomes horribly diluted. How can we talk about misogyny in video games when a lot of the controversies surrounding this supposed misogyny are a complete shitstorm? This controversy doesn't even exist. I mean, he's completely wrong in terms of what this trophy actually refers to. And this in itself has set back the discussion, because now, what have we got? We have a brigade of the video game Taliban coming in and essentially eliminating any possibility of rational discourse. And that is why you have to be really, really careful, because you can't pretend that all the people watching video game videos are rational, sane adults. The reality of the situation is that a significant number of people watching a lot of video game content have some issues here and there. Maybe they are just socially awkward. Maybe they have some kind of mental disorder. Maybe they're actually sociopathic. I mean, from reading some of the comments on some videos, I'm pretty sure that these people are either master trolls or actually out of their minds. These are the people you're dealing with. Don't be afraid to tackle difficult subjects, but for the love of God, make sure you get them right, because if you don't, then you set the entire thing way, way back, and it takes quite a lot to actually recover from that. Now, the final issue is the fourth wall breaking nature of some of these achievements. This is not a funny joke. Unless Hoss is some kind of obscure reference to Greek mythology, and my Google searches did not reveal anything of the sort, only one comment on a Destructoid page, which appears to be a joke. Unless it is some clever reference, this is just flat out dumb, and in fact, this game is completely full of that stuff. There's an achievement called Lubed Up, for instance. There's an achievement called Swinging, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of achievements like this, and they're puerile, and I suppose that makes sense considering the kind of audience that achievements are aiming for. Who really cares about achievements? I've railed against achievements for ages. Jim Sterling made a good comment on this, as did David Jaff. He said in his Twitter feed he hates the trend of trying to be funny via naming trophies. It breaks immersion and disrespects your fiction. Would Spielberg flash, "I told you they were good with numbers" on screen when Kingsley is counting the names on the list in Schindler's List? Yeah. Now, I would not exactly compare God of War to Schindler's List. That's like comparing the Hungry Hungry Caterpillar to A Tale of Two Cities. But you get his point, right? It's dumb humor that just completely takes you out of the experience. In fact, it's something that they went out of their way to not do with Heavy Rain, yeah? Because those trophies, if they popped up in the middle of these really important scenes, would have completely taken you out of the moment. They deliberately delay the display of the trophy until the scene is completely done, yeah? Till the end of the chapter. Pretty smart stuff. Jim Sterling has a good article on this. He makes the example of Mufasa dying and bringing up this thing that said Mufailsa. Yeah, we get the idea. But the whole point of it is that achievements serve very little practical purpose, and in this case, they don't appear to actually reward you for doing anything out of the ordinary. This is just part of the plot. So why the hell are they giving you a trophy, an achievement point? It's like, hey, congratulations, you got to this part of the game, which you would have gotten to anyway. Here's a trophy. You know, back in my day, achievements you actually had to do something out of the ordinary for. Apparently, you don't have to do that anymore. It's insane. As far as I'm concerned, these annoying little gamey pieces of crap should not be popping up over our video games. If you're trying to immerse us in a narrative, no matter how stupid and kitschy and cheesy it is, just like God of War, then for the love of God, don't make it any more difficult on yourselves by having these stupid little things pop up. Here's a virtual little trophy for doing nothing. Oh yeah, the fourth wall? We don't even know that exists. We just Kool-Aided our bloody way through that thing. What a goddamn mess this has been. What a goddamn mess. I don't have enough fingers to point. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch, and I will see you next time.